Hello all, it's me, Andy from Blitz Gaming. Hope you're having a great day. We've got an update, well, saying an update, another review with the Asus Prime H610M -A D4 motherboard. Today we're going to be using the Alder Lake 2600K. So we'll see how well this budget board copes, how hot it gets, how well the heat sinks cope, really how much wattage it uses, and we'll be using Cinebench, Blender, the usual stuff, plenty of games and Fire Strike. Let's see how well it copes. All inside our Cooler Master 4000D. Okay, let's get on with it and see how it comes out. Okay, there's a test system. As I said earlier, I've got Asus Prime H610M -A D4 motherboard with Intel's Alder Lake i5-12600K. We've got quite a few graphic cards, including the RX 6500 XT tested. We're using the latest drivers. Okay, the AMD one, I'm not sure about the Nvidia one. It's not certified, but we needed that to run the 6500 XT. Take a look at Cinebench. See there, we're doing up to 70C, and we're doing 100% on all the cores. You can see the P cores are doing the 4.8, and the E cores are 3.5 something. So yeah, it's going well. Can't really complain too much, really. And then we end up with a nice score of a big 17,000 something. Can't complain there at all. We'll take a quick look at the 3D Mark, CPU scores, the CPU profile benchmark we're doing. So yeah, 16 threads, we've got 8,000, max threads 7,900. I'm not quite sure why I call that max, and you've got 16 threads. Yeah, pass. So yeah, the score looks good, can't complain too much. We'll quickly have a scroll down, look at the bars. You can see the temperature there. At the end of the day, I mean, we can't complain. Now, I don't know if this works 100% with Alder Lake, because it comes up with only the 4,800 megahertz cores, the P cores. You can see they be up to 60 odd. So, yeah, so the temperature's doing around 60, well, up to a maximum of about 70. So, it's fine, well in the limits. But don't forget, we are using the Fera 5 cooler. Yeah, don't forget, the 12600K doesn't come with a box cooler at all. Okay, now let's have a look at a chart. I'm not going to go through every synthetic benchmark program, but yeah, if we go by the temperatures, the CPU is getting up to 71C on basically all the programs we tested. The VRM heatsink, which is the big one on the top left hand side of the motherboard, that was getting up to around 85C. Probably a tad too hot for my liking, but it's well in the limits. It's not going to die. Yeah, so yeah, things are fine. And the heatsink for the chipset, that was in the 40s, so that's well low. Wattage wise, going by the wall. So that's the system power, total system power. We're doing 188, 190. Now I've got 4 fans in the system, but I had them turned off. With them turned on, it goes up to about 2.5. So they're worth about 15 watts in total. So yeah, if you go by the score now, go down to the scores. The multi-bench score, 17,000. That's massive. You ain't going to go wrong there. Even a single score, 1,800, that's great. Again, you got the CPU profile for 3D Mark, 8,000. If you want to see all the scores, go back. Time Spire score, again, that's just on the built-in GPU. It ain't going to go fast. I mean, it's lucky it done that much. PC Mark, 10. Again, it's an overall score if you're doing things like office work, looking on net, browsing in the net, what they call it, conferencing, calling, and all that sort of stuff. That's the overall score. It's a good score. We can't complain though. It is a good CPU. So there we go. Okay, let's get into the gaming benchmarks. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Intel's IGP at 720p. You can see we ain't getting a very good frame rate at all. We're in the low 20s. 15 now on the minimum. I mean, at the end of the day, it's too low to really play this game. You need a nice fluent play style in this game for the fighting. It's no good at all, and this is Intel's highest IGP they have. We switch over to Nvidia's 1030, again 720p on the lower settings. At least we've got a frame rate we can play now, but even though it's low, but we're in the 40s. We switch over to AMD's RX 550, this time 1080p, and you can see 1080p, we're on low settings, we're on the minute, again a bare minimum really. The game's quite demanding, as I said though, but I don't think it runs well at all, because Valhalla runs 10 times better. We switch over to Nvidia 1650. We're on 1080p high settings, so you can see, well, 1650 has no problem playing. But even though there was micro freezes as well now and then, as I said, I think Alder Lake is still in, it's not 100% running yet. Okay, we've got AMD's new 6500 XT, 1080p ultra presets. They're not very well, the frame rate's low, but okay, I know the card's not supposed to be that great according to people, but I think there's a big problem running on Alder Lake. Switch over to AMD's RX 6600, 1080p Ultra. Again, well, we've got a good frame rate, but Alder Lake still freezes. I think there's a big freeze coming up, if I remember rightly, soon. It lasts for about 3 seconds. Again, I think Alder Lake is not 100% perfect. Here's the freeze. So you can see it, and you get a lot of this. It was not just on AMD, it was on the Nvidia cards as well. Okay, now we've got the chart up. You can see there's definitely a problem with AMD hardware running on Alder Lake. The 6500 XT, it's all over the place. Ultra settings is really low. It's getting beat by 1650. We certainly shouldn't be getting beat by 1650. It does quite well in high. That's probably about what it should be. But even the 6600, if you look at high, the higher frame rate is as good as the Ultra. So it's definitely it's either an AMD driver. Now we are using the optional driver for AMD because we had to for the 6500 XT. So we're not using a certified driver. So these problems could be fixed. But I think most of it's down to Alder Lake, because there was funny things running on Nvidia side as well. There was freezing. In some cases I had to start the PC, reset the PC like several times, because when it started, it basically literally didn't all go. It literally locked the PC up on Nvidia and the AMD side. So I don't know what was happening. It's definitely some sort of problem with Alder Lake. Again, I've never had the problems at all with Valhalla. Okay, Total War Troy. Intel's IGP 770 at 720p. We've got a good frame rate. It run well. It's not particularly smooth. I mean, if you look at the frame time, it's all over the place. It's not smooth at all. It don't run lovely smooth like you want it to. But the frame rate's there. I mean, if they can sort out the driver or the issues, you might be okay. I will be doing Warhammer 3, but when Warhammer 3 turned up, I done a quick test run and it ran awful. So we stayed with Troy for the time being. We now switch over to Nvidia's 1030, same settings, 720p, low presets. Again, yeah, I mean, like the frame time now is way smoother than what it was on the IGB, and we got some good frame rates, 90s in the average, 1% low, 69. If you look at the GPU, it's at 100%. It's been battered. We switch over to AMD's RX 550. This one being an Asus graphic card. We're still at 720p, but this time on high presets. She's still in there. She's still in the 30s, the 1% lows, high 20s. The frame time's not bad either. Can't complain too much. It's on a 2 gig memory limit, but we are at 720p at this moment. Yeah, does well. Can't complain. We've switched back to the Intel RGB. This time 1080p settings, low preset. And we're still in there. We're on the 1% lows in the 20s, averaging 30 plus. So it's there on the borderline, but it can be played at 1080p. We switch over to Nvidia's 1650, 1080p, ultra preset. So now we're sort of like up in the ante. You can see it plays no problem. We want average 50 frames, 1% low, in a high 30. So we've got no problem with the 1650 if you want to run our ultra settings. Now with graphic cards now coming down, won't come down enough yet, but if this card gets the normal price, it should be about £150. Switch over to AMD's RX 6500 XT. It's got the same sort of frame rate as the Nvidia 1650. It should be faster, but it's not. But it does have a way better frame time. Don't know if you noticed on the frame time, the 1650 was quite jagged, not particularly smooth at all. Switch over to AMD's RX 6600. Again, 1080p ultra presets. Yeah, we're well in the 80s, 1% low in the 60s odds. So I have no problem on this card. By the way, this point here, where the river is where we take our benchmarks from. So yeah, she runs okay, no problem. The frame time is nice and smooth at this moment. But as I said before, I could start it up again and it'd be the complete opposite. There's something going on with Alder Lake. Okay, going by the chart, and then we've got it up. Got the bottom of the range, the Intel RGB 770 at the bottom, followed by Nvidia's 1030, then the RX 550. I mean, well, they all run and got some good frame rates at 720p, low presets. But the frame time was, again, it's just not smooth running. Again, I think it's just an Alder Lake problem. I don't think it's a graphic card problem. I think it's an Alder Lake problem. We go to 720p high settings and you can see the frame rate then drops. We're on the 30 barrier. It's too much. You're probably better off playing with medium settings. Probably give yourself probably a large army. We go up to 1080p, the IGP and the 1030 and the 550. They're on the bare minimum, really. You probably want to not play with that sort of thing. It's a bit too low Again, I still think out of lag is one of the causes. We will do a test again on one of our other platforms to check. You can see the 1650 and the RX 6500 XT of trading blows, and it shouldn't be like that. The 6500 XT should be walking away from the Nvidia 1650, but it's not. And obviously we end up with the RX 6600 ruling the batch, being the fastest card. Again, the frame time, even though it's not on the chart, but on the videos, sometimes it was smooth, sometimes it weren't smooth, but there was a lot of spikes going off all over the place. And just to let you know, when I do the benchmark, I don't go by the benchmark number at the end. I'll take my own number off the using Afterburner, and I take it where the army crosses the river, which is the most intensive shot, which is slightly lower than the number you would get at the end. CSGO, so settings we're at 720p. We're going to be on low settings, wherever lowest we can go, or be turned off, except the multi-core, which we need. CSGO, everyone's favourite. Okay, so we're on Intel's IGP at 720p. We're on low settings, or they're off. So you've got things like anti-laser and all that. It's rather that'll be off, and everything else will be low. So yeah, it runs okay. I mean, it runs a hell of a lot better than what it did when I done my first test about 4 or 5 weeks back. When we done our first review. I mean, the top frame time shows you it's still spiking, but it's not like before when it was really freezing. It was just not playable. I think you could probably play it now, but the freezing is still there, but it's not as much. So yeah, we're getting a good 140 frames average. 1% lows in the 60s. You can see that 0.1% lows getting right down. That's where we're getting those freezes. So again, it can be awkward to play, but it does well, as I say. As an IGP, it does pretty well. We switch over to Nvidia's 1030. Different map. I have no control of the maps. Same settings before. 720p low settings, or off. So yeah, it runs better, even though it just froze there. Again, it's improved, but it's I think it's still a long way from being perfect. See on the frame time, we've got plenty of spikes coming up now. We switch over to AMD's RX 550. And yeah, I got a lot better frame rate on here than we had on the 1030 or the IGB. But yeah, you got to remember this has got 4 gig of memory. The other card only had 2. We set 100% GPU speed, mind you. Utilisation. The CPU's only doing about 15%. 1% low, still at 128. So we've got no problem running the game. I think if you buy a graphic card these days, you'll want to buy a bare minimum of a minimum of 4 gig. I mean, ideally you really need 8. Especially if you want to play at 1080p. Games are still now starting to get in over that 8 gig barrier. I mean, this is an old game, so it doesn't use a lot of memory, but well, this is what, 10-year-old at least. So that will be nice. And in day, if AMD Nvidia could release new budget graphic card. Just going to change the settings to high. So it's basically now everything high or on. So we've got MSA and all that's now turned on. And sort of the filtering 16 times and shadows turned on. We switch back to Intel's IGP, but this time on 1080p. High settings are on. You can see the frame rate has gone right down. You're better off playing 1080p low. We were getting around 50, 60 frames then. 1080p, high. I mean, as a competitive game, you want to play on this settings anyway. So yeah, we've got this very spiky frame time. Not very good at all, because we want it nice, freely movement, and it's just not happening. But otherwise, in theory, it's playable. We're in the 30s. Now switch over to Nvidia's 1030. Same settings, 1080p, high settings all on. Yeah, we've got a way better frame rate than what we had on the Intel stuff. Went into the 70s, averaging 90s odd. 1% low, 60 odd. Don't improve my gameplay, mind you, but what can I say? We've got a lot of smoother line. We're still getting 100% utilisation on the GPU. CPU's got 9%. Look at main system memory up just under 6 gig. And video memory now on 1080p, we're just under 2 gig. As I said, ideally, if you want to buy a graphic card these days, you want a bare minimum of 4. As long as you're starting a budget, but if you want to pay at 1080p, you really got to start looking at 8 gig. Okay, now switch over to AMD's RX 5500. Sorry, the 550. Again, we're getting sort of frame rate similar to all the Nvidia 1030. If now you look, because this has got 4 gig of memory, it's now going over 2 gig of onboard video memory. As I said, you definitely want to be looking at the bare minimum these days is 4 gig. So yeah, plays good. Again, well, I say plays good. I mean, if you look at the frame time, it's going all over the place. Again, we keep getting those spikes on the Alder Lake system. Switch over to Nvidia 1650. Going to high settings, 1080p. Obviously, there's no problem running at these things. We're doing 100 odd, 180, 90 frames a second. 1% low, dropping down to the 80s. So it does have a big spike every now and then. It runs fine. Switch over to AMD 6500 XT. In the 240s. At last, this game, well, this card is finally getting away from the 1650. Just makes me get killed quicker at the end of the day. But yeah, it's running well. Frame time's good. Again, you can still see the spikies coming up, but not that many. It's quite smooth running. We finish off with the RX 6600. Again, 1080p, high settings all on. We're within 400 frames there, basically. Can't complain, it really runs fine. I don't remember seeing any major spikes or anything on the RX 6600 or any freezing. But yeah, it runs okay. Can't complain, but I wouldn't call it. It's not really a budget card with today's prices. It's around the £400 mark. So yeah, so that's all done for CSGO. Let's move on for another game. Battlefield 1. Use the presets on the graphic screen on this to set it to a low, medium, high, ultra. We turn off the VSync and HDR. Everything else we leave on what's on default. We are on 1080p. Low settings on the Nvidia 1030. The built-in IGP 770 from Intel didn't run. Had errors, just refused to run the game. So yeah, we got a good frame rate. Yeah, this is one's quite old, but it's way better than obviously the new one I bought out. It's been blinking awful. Yeah, so we've got a good frame rate, averaging what, 50 odds, 1% low, again in the 50s. Frame time's quite smooth. Again, GPU's at 100%. A lot we can do about that. And we're losing 1 gig of memory. Sorry, 1.8 gig of memory, and this is on low settings. Switch over to AMD's RX 550. game. We're getting a good 60 frames, 1% low 50s, good frame time, plays well on here. One thing about Alder Lake, it seems to work well on Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. We're now over the 2 gig of memory because this card's got 4. Again, as I said earlier, you want to buy a card now with a minimum of 4 gig because we're only on low settings at 1080p. Game got 100% utilisation. By the way, this is the spot where I take the benchmark from if you want to know where I get it from. The numbers right here. So now we go to high settings. I'm not going to try ultra, it's too much. We're in the 30s, but playable, 1% lows, down to 27. I mean, you're probably better off playing in medium settings, get a good frame rate and probably a good quality graphics. So yeah, it's still running well on the high settings at 1080p. Switch over to AMD's 550. Going on high settings. We're in the 30s. This actually game comes out better on Nvidia hardware. That's a dead certainty. The frame time is pretty good. It's not particularly going all over the place. 1% lows down to 29, and the 0.1% lows down to 27. So you do have a drop here and there. So we're going up the, if you look at the memory now, just under 3 gig of memory being used. And still on 100% utilisation on the GPU. Switch over to Nvidia 1650. We're now on 1080p Ultra. Again, remind you, no HDR on this or VSync. And everything on the main screen is left as default. So yeah, we've got on no problem running at Ultra on a 1650, and obviously it's going to be the same for the other 2 graphic cards. We now switch over to AMD 65 RX 6500 XT game, and then there you can see we've got a bit of a, it's got too smooth in some places. Oh, it's running alright. We've got 100 odd frames. At the end of the day, it's running fine. And then we finish off with AMD's RX 6600, again 1080p Ultra settings, or Ultra preset. Yeah, it runs fine, no problem at all running. Again, the frame time is nice and smooth. It seems to work sort of odd. Lower the power of the graphic card, it seems to be really, really spiky.
They're putting up a heck of a fight!
Okay, let's look at the chart. Runs well. The game, at the end of the day, it never had any major spikes on the campaign, what we were doing. Couldn't see any faults at all while I was playing the game. So Intel's RGB, as I said earlier, wouldn't run, it just refused to start. Comes up with a driver error, some bizarre thing. But AMD's RX 550 and Nvidia's 1030, 1080p low settings, got a good frame rate, both up to the 60s and a 1% low in the 50s, so no problem there. Then you go to the 1650 up to the RX 6600, both flying, and you can see now the 65 XT is now actually pulling away at last from the 1650. We go to 1080p. Okay, the budget cards are in a bit low. Put that on medium, you'll be fine, no problem. Easy get another 5 frames, 10 frames a second out of that. And obviously 1650 to the RX 6600 on Ultra, have no problem running again. Again, the 6500 XT is pulling away from the 1650 as it should do. I still think it's a tad too slow, but it's pulling away at last. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. We're on Intel's RGB 770 at 720p low presets. Before you can start, you can see the frame timer having a nightmare. It just doesn't want to run this game. It's You can't just sit on the frame timer while I'm playing it. It's definitely freezing. It's not very nice at all. Even though we've got a good average frame rate of 40s odd, but where they've got the 1% low drops, you can definitely feel it while playing. Switch over to Nvidia's 1030, again 720p low preset settings. So yeah, now we've got a decent frame rate again, but we haven't got that seriously dragged frame time counter. It's not bad. We're doing what, 80 milliseconds. Can't complain with too much really. 0 will be brilliant, but I don't think we're ever going to get there. But yeah, it's a lot better on the Nvidia card than the RGB. We switch over to AMD's RX 550. Slightly better than the 1030. Again, got a fairly good frame time. It's not so bad at all. It's certainly not freezing like it was, and it's not freezing like it was when we done the original review of the Alder Lake processor. Now back on the Nvidia 1030, this time 1080p low presets. We haven't done the RGB because it weren't good enough. Yeah, we're in a playable rate at 30 odd frames. So yeah, seems to be okay, not a problem. Frame time, it's still got a few spikes going off here and there, especially when you come around that corner. It adds those spikes. I don't know how bad it'd be in a city. I ain't got that far in the game. I'll get there one day, not sure when. Again, we get the old spikes as we turn around, get the duck snap. It spikes up. We switch back over to AMD's RX 550. Game frame rate's a little bit better. At 5 frames more over the Nvidia 1030. So yeah, it's doing well. Again, 100% utilisation of the GPU. Frame time's a lot better, a lot smoother. Yeah, drivers are getting there slowly. We switch over to Nvidia 1650 1080p ultra presets. Got a good frame rate, and in the day we're in the 40s, so I can't complain too much. That fuzziness is to do something recording with the anti-alias on it. It makes it go funny recording. It drives me nuts, but I can't do a lot about it unless I turn it off, the anti-alias on. We now switch over to AMD 6500 XT. Again, the fuzziness is to do with the recording, not to do with the game. It just comes out funny when you got the anti-alias on it. It's bizarre. We are now on the AMD RX 6600, and we're packing out 100 frames, no problem. And a good frame time, which is great. GPU still at maximum. And we have over 2 gig of video memory being used. Got rid of the fuzziness. As I said, it's to do with the SSO setting on something. But basically you turn that off and it gets rid of this fuzziness. But it's on every game. What turns that on, it seems to cause the fuzziness in other games as well. Just to prove out the point, that is the problem. So yeah, it runs fine on an RX 6600. No problem at all. Okay, got the charter. You can see straight away Alder Lake platform still has those massive 1% lows going right down, and obviously when we run the IGP it was freezing. On top of that, we got some good frame rates, can't complain. The RX 6600 obviously leading the pack, followed by the 6500, then the 1650, and then the RX 550, then the 1030. So yeah, the 6500 XT is now doing what it should do. Again, just like Battlefield, it's now faster than the 1650. 1080p low, well, they're flying. I mean, if you look at the RX 6600, it has a massive 1% low. It's terrible. The spikes are still there. I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, it's a lot better than what it was, as I said, when I done the Alder Lake review a couple of months back. But it's not perfect by miles yet. Okay, it may be better under Windows 11, which it's designed for, but we won't do a test of that until they bring out the service pack for Windows 11, then we'll switch over. Okay, let's move on. Red Dead Redemption 2. Let's go for the settings. We're on low settings or off at the end of the day, and we're using Intel's IGP 770 720p, and I just said the low settings or off. That TXA keeps turning itself on, it's a pain in the backside, but if you got that bug, if you set everything else first, reset, come back, turn it off, and it'll be okay. So even at low settings on the IGP, we're on the bare minimum really. I mean, it's a shoot 'em up. You're gonna need nice, free, fluent gameplay. It just don't have it. I have noticed one thing. There must have been an update somewhere over the last week. If you haven't got enough video memory, it won't let you set the settings. End of story. So basically, this is a game. If you look at what we've got there, we're using 3.6 gig of video memory. You've got memory, it's using system memory now, because we've got system memory on max settings on the BIOS. But if you only had a 2 gig video card, and basically you're going to be in trouble. Switch over to Nvidia's 1030, just like the RGB, we are on bare minimums. As I said, it's not a lot you can do, because if you ain't got enough video memory, you're in trouble. You can't really change the settings. Well, you go to the lowest, we're on the lowest. You might be able to go to a lower resolution. I can't remember now what the last resolution is in the game. We're on 720p, and she's on there, like I said, we're in the 30s just. I mean, you might be able to get away with it. The frame time's not bad, even though we've got the GPU going at 100%. But it's not spiky like it has been in other games. We now switch over to AMD's RX 550. This is the Asus Phoenix model. It's got 4 gig of memory. Again, 720p, low settings or turned off. It's got a lot better frame rate than the Nvidia card. Plus it has 4 gig of memory. So yeah, now you can see we're going over to 2 gig. As I said, I don't know if there was an update, but you can no longer set anything you want regardless what graphic card you've got. If you run out of video memory, just don't allow you to set the preferences. So it's, again, as I said earlier on in the benchmarking, if you get a video card these days, you want a bare minimum of 4 gig, ideally 8 gig of memory. For a test, just want to check if AMD's RX 550 can now handle 1080p. You see we're on the bare minimums. We're just in the 30s, but we're just there. Switch over to Nvidia 1650. Again, 1080p, low presets. Or off, so there's no MSA, TXA or TAA on. No anti-stropping filtering. No triple buffering. It's just on basic low end settings. So yeah, we've got a good frame rate. Frame time's pretty good. It's not too jerky or freezing. So yeah, it's getting there on the Alder Lake system. We'll switch over to AMD 6500 XT. 1080p, this time high settings. But we've got the FXAA, MSAA and TAA turned off. But we've got anti-stropping filtering now turned on and triple buffering on as well. So yeah, she's starting to look lovely now. And the 6500 XT plays really well. at 1080p with those settings turned on. Okay, now we're on AMD's RX 6600, 1080p, but this time everything's turned on and maxed out. So no messing around now, and the RX 6600 plays fine. I've not got the others here, but they will be on the chart, the full breakdown, how well the other cards run. But yeah, 6600 has no problem playing. We've got like 50 frame average, great frame time, 1% low in the 40s, so not really dropping a lot, so very, very well done. Okay, got the chart up, and by going it, if you want to play the game at 1080p with everything on, you want at least an AMD RX 6600. Okay, so we go to the budgets, 720p. Okay, the RGB I think it's too low, as well as the 1030 from Nvidia. Again, it's too low. I mean, I'm not saying it's not playable. Again, you probably have to load those settings. I think one more resolution. I'm pretty sure it goes down one more. The RX 550 was in there. We're in the 40s, and the 1% lower in the 30s. So you'll be okay with an AMD RX 550. Then we go up to 1080p. Again, now we've got the AMD RX 550 now, struggling to stay in the 30s. Again, got to remember to shoot them up. You want fluent gameplay, no bottlenecks anywhere. You're probably going to be getting yourself killed quite often at that sort of low frame rate. Even though it's on the, it's still close to 30, but I think it's still too low. We go up to the 1650. And that shoots up to 70 odd, no problem. Then the RX 6500 XT in the 90s, and then we're well over 100 with the RX 6600 at low settings. We stay at 1080p. This time we turn higher settings on, but we've got none of the TAA, FXAA or MSAA turned on, and you can see the drop straight away with the higher settings. Okay, 1650 still playable. Still in the 40s, 1% low in the 30s. The RX XT 6500 is in the 60s, and the 6600 in the 80s. So no problem there. And then we go right up to maxing out, and really the only thing that's worth playable, as I said earlier, is the RX 6600 with everything turned on. So yeah, that's where you gotta go. Let's go on to the next game. Battlefield 5. We lose presets on here. We don't change anything on the front screen except turn off HDR and VSync. Everything all stays the same. On the graphics screen, we just change the presets to what we want. So it'll be low, medium, high or ultra. So we're on the Intel IGP 720p low presets. Okay, we're on the average i30s, 1% lows in the low 30s. I mean, it's playable. I probably won't play on multiplayer because it's just shoot 'em up. If you're going to get any spikes, I mean, there is some. You can see it there dropping out into i20s. It probably affect your gameplay and you probably end up getting shot. We now switch over to Nvidia's 1030, 1080p, but this time we're on the higher presets. It's too high. We need to go down to medium or low. Basically, these settings it's too high. The 1030 just don't have it. Again, we're at 1.8 gig of memory being used. GPU's up there, 90%, going up to 100% on the GPU. If you look at system memory, over 10 gig of memory. So those people out there who wanna, have only got 8 gig of memory for budgets, you need to update your memory requirement. Yeah, Battlefield 5 uses a lot more power than Battlefield 1. Switch over to the AMD RX 550. Still 720p. High presets. So yeah, the AMD card does a way better than Nvidia, but again, has 4 gig of memory and it is higher clocked. RAM's gone down on the system memory. Depends how well the GPU's using it, I suppose. Bit weird that. But yeah, it's doing alright. We're now on video memory up to 2.8 gig. GPU's now 100%. So yeah, AMD card is certainly doing pretty good. Just switch over to Nvidia 1030, but this time 1080p low presets. Again, she's still too low. You're better off playing, as I said earlier, 720p, probably a medium or low setting, and you'll be fine. Switch over to AMD's RX 550, 1080p low. We're averaging what, 30s, 1% low in i20s. The frame time is pretty good, 20 odd milliseconds. Doing 2.5 gig of video memory. Basically, the GPU's bunging out 100% utilization. Again, these budget video cards they've been around too long. We need new ones from Nvidia, AMD, and Intel coming up. Hopefully, we'll sort out the low end spec. But yeah, we're still playable on 1080p low. We'll switch over to the Nvidia 1650 by Zotac. We're on 1080p, this time high presets. What we're doing, average of 50, 1% lower in the 40s. Frame time's pretty good. We're using just under 3 gig of video memory now. GPU's 70s. So yeah, she's doing pretty good. Not to rise, frame time's good. Never noticed any spiking going on. So yeah, doing pretty cool now. This is the spot, by the way, we take the benchmark from. We switch over to AMD's RX 6500 XT, 1080p ultra preset. So now everything's on at the end of the day. So yeah, she runs well, has no problem. This card with a 60 odds average, 1% low in the 50s. Memories again 3.0 gig. GPU utilization 80s, so we're okay there, no problem. Frame time is cool. Again, I don't think there's any spikes. Again, this is one of the games where it's massively improved. Mind you, this game never really had a bug when I'd done the first set of testings. We switch over to AMD's RX 6600. Again, 1080p ultra preset. Just like the 6500, has no problem playing. Now we're doing in the 90s, 1% low, 70s. So yeah, doing alright. And the video memory is now at the 4.1. Does make you wonder how that changes quite a lot, really. And system memory is still under the 10 gig on the AMD systems. Okay, let's have a look at the chart. Okay, on the budget offerings, the RX 550 is the best of the cards in 720p and 1080p low. So yeah, they're all on the bottom of the stack. I mean, at the end of the day, I would play any of them 27p, except the RGP, probably on low to medium settings to get a decent frame rate. Even with the RX 550. Okay, we've got the 1650 and the two big boys, and we certainly have no problem playing at 1080p low settings. Yeah, even the frame time was good on all the cards. We got up to medium, gain, 1030 RX 550. They're too slow. So you have to go on a 1650 upwards, and we're doing 60 odd and 50 odd in a 1% low for the 1650. The 6500 XT does what it should be doing, being faster than the 1650, and obviously the RX 6600 beats them all, so it should. Don't forget, the 6500 XT. In fact, all the AMD cards are on the optional driver, don't forget. So it's still classed as a beta. It's not a certified driver, but you have to use it for 6500 XT. There's about a 5 frame to an 8 frame drop on the RX 6600 to what we originally done on the Gigabyte Aorus motherboard about 8 weeks back. But you don't forget, okay, the drives have changed now, and then that one, plus it was a different motherboard, and this has got the latest update with the BIOS. Farcry 6, we're on the Nvidia 1030. The IGP wouldn't run, it wouldn't render the screen, it just come up blank in all sorts of garbles on the screen. So we're at 720p on a low preset, because we've got presets on this. Again, no HDR or VSync used. So yeah, we got again we got a bit of a spiky frame time, and you can see it on the screen. And yeah, we're averaging what, 30 frames, 1% lower in the 20. So yeah, you can see it's definitely playable. Okay, see one just there. CPU is out. The GPU, sorry, is 100%, and we're just under 2 gig of video memory. We switch over to AMD's RX 550. It definitely works better on AMD hardware this game. We've got average of 49 frames, 1% low 20s, high 20s. That's good 15 frames over the Nvidia 1030. We've got 3.5 gig of memory being used, which is another bonus because this card's got 4 gig, Nvidia's only got 2. GPU's going between 50 and 100%. The spikes on the frame time, see there's a freeze just there. So yeah, we're still getting the micro freezes, can't get past that. We now switch up to 1080p. And now, obviously, the Nvidia 1030 it's no longer got it. Average in the 20s, 1% lows down below the 20s. So yeah, it's not going to be very good at all. And the frame time, again, it's a bit jagged. Yeah, it's just basically this game. It's new. It's going to want a lot of video memory, to be honest with you, and good clock speed. And the Nvidia 1030 just really don't have it. We switch back to AMD's RX 550 again. It's too low, really. We're in the average in the 29, 1% low, still in the 20s, but again, both of these budget cards, really, you'll have to play at 720p. We now switch over to Nvidia 1650. 1080p, this time ultra quality settings. And you can see it has no problem playing it all whatsoever. So we're doing what, 60 frames, average, 1% low, still getting those micro spikes. You can see them on the frame time. Again, we're still not perfect on the Alder Lake platform. We switch over to AMD's RX 6500 XT, and we're basically doing the same frame rate as the Nvidia 1650. Should be a good 20% faster. So we're doing an average of 60%, 60 frames, sorry, and 1% low in the 20s, high 20s. You can see the frame time spiky. Yeah, it's not beautiful at all. Again, this could just go down to being we're on Alder Lake at this moment in time, still buggy, and we're on the beta driver for the graphic card. Switch over to AMD's RX 6600, and you can see we're now over the 100 frames, and we're 1% lows in the 70s. So yeah, the RX 6600 is no problem playing. Yeah, can't complain really. Got memory, do have Fidelity FX on this game. We won't use it at this time. Okay, we've got the chart up. As I said earlier, Intel's RGB won't run, so they've got 0 marks there. We've also included on the chart the Fidelity FX, but only on Ultra preset. So yeah, if we look at the Nvidia and AMD RX 550, 720p, low presets, they're fine, run the game, no problem. Get the 1080p, and then we're struggling, we're on the bare limits now. The RX 550 at 1080p with Fidelity FX, I mean that, well okay, that's going a good 5 frames, so that's survive, but it doesn't really do much for Nvidia's 1030. But I mean, if you put them down to performance or quality settings, you probably get them into a playable frame rate. Look out for 1650 onwards, they have no problem playing the game, even at ultra settings. The 1650 is easily running out the game up to 60 frames per second. The 1% low, I mean, it's still getting those silly spikes. We're dropping big times into the 30s or below the 30s. Not very good at all. But I think, again, it's down to our Alder Lake. In the 1% low, it doesn't seem to affect the RX 6600 that much. Don't know why. Again, that could be a driver problem, but then again, it does it on Nvidia as well. They're all spikes, so I can't say what it is. I mean, the 6500 XT, again, that's got really low drops. Again, I still think it's an Alder Lake problem. Plus, you've got to remember, we are on the option driver for the AMD graphics card. So, yeah, it seems to run, well, fairly okay. Again, for me personally, I would still not buy Alder Lake at this moment in time because I think it's too fussy. Shadow War. It's another game we just use presets, make life easy. And we are on the Intel IGP 770 on 720p low presets. And we got what, 40 odd frames, high 40 odd frames, and 1% low in the 40s. So yeah, it plays well. Mind you, this game it always played well from the start on the Alder Lake platform. So can't blame there. I mean, if you look at the frame time, it's not particularly spiking in any direction at all. So yeah, it's a game which is been optimized by Sega. Is it Sega or Sony? Make it. So yeah, it does well. Can't complain at all. Plays well on the IGP on 720p. I can't always get a 100% frame rate from all the cards because the enemies are not always in the same place, so it can be a bit different. So basically what I do for the benchmark, I just take hopefully a certain place where everyone's going to be, and just take it as an average. At the end of the day, that's what it can be. I could always use the built-in benchmark, but I'd rather show you what it's like when you're running around. It's so much better. Problem with built-in benchmarks, you never tell if it's really laggy. And you can always tell when if you move left and right, it takes 2 seconds to move left and right, you know it's laggy. We switch over to Nvidia 1030, still 720p, low preset settings. Game runs fine, no problem. I mean, the game looks great. I mean, best thing about this game, it don't really look awful on any setting. Okay, it can get a bit blurry on the 720p, but you can't have everything your own way. Now we're on the AMD's RX 550. Gain 720p, low presets. It's now pulling away a little bit. It's going to be up about 10 so frames. 1% low. It's in the 70s. So no massive drops on running this game. The frame time is good. Nice and small, how we want it. So again, it runs fine. We're now back on the 1030, but this time 1080p, Again, low presets. Okay, the frame rates now coming down. We're on the average of 40 odd, 1% lower in the high 30s. Frame time, as again, it's not particularly spiky on the Nvidia cards or the AMD cards. It runs well, this game, on Elder Lake. This is where I usually take the benchmarks. Just when I jump down there and kill those 3 people, whatever the frame rate is then, is what I usually call it. So yeah, now we're on the AMD RX 550, 1080p, last presets. Again, has no problem playing a game. Switch over to Nvidia 1650. This time we're still at 1080p, but this time we're on medium presets. So you can see 1650 still has no problem running the game. If you look at the frame timer, where it's like you've got a blimp on it. So I can't really say anything about it. GPU's at 100%. Still averaging 90, 1% low, 77. So yeah, great car for a great game. We switch over to AMD's RX 6500 XT, this time ultra presets. And you can see, yeah, it's got no problem at all running. At all. Plays great, nice and fluent. But yeah, we have got the old spikes come up. Again, this could be down to the optional driver not being certified and being a bit flaky. I think it's only the first driver, possibly the second driver, but they're not certified, so we just have to wait. But otherwise, it's got a good frame rate. The 1% low, again, big drops. We now go over to AMD's RX 6600. It's still 1080p at ultra presets. Runs fine. Now, being the same driver as the 6500 XT, but if you look at the frame time, it's like not got any jags on it at all. Where the 6500 XT had a lot. So it is a bit of a funny thing. It's the reason why I don't like buying graphic cards when they first come out. I know these days if you don't buy one, you never get one. Yeah, it's awkward because I always find for the first 2 or 3 months, graphic card drives are rubbish. Okay, now I've got the chart up. You can see the IGP had no problem playing the game at 720p on lowest preset. I mean, you might be able to bang it up a notch to medium. Obviously, the 2 budget cards had no problem at all. And we go to 1080p, and they're doing similar frame rates. Okay, the RX 550 wins. Yeah, I won't go to medium. You probably drop below the 30s or beyond the 30 barrier if you went to medium. But otherwise, yeah, no problem with 1080p for the 2 budget cards. We get to the 1650, we fly up to the 130s and 180 odds for the 65 XT, which is good because it's now pulling away. Yeah, so and obviously the RX 6600, what, 245 frames. I've got a bit of an odd thing here. When I've done the Z board, the Oris board, I've got a mark down there 293, but I think I had BAR turned on, and plus it was a different driver. Now I've noticed throughout the entire setup the H board is definitely slower. Now I'm pretty sure I had BAR on when I'd done the Z board, because all the benchmarks are coming out slower than what they've done when I've done the Z board. But yeah, it's definitely it's slower throughout. Now I've not done BAR testing on any of the benchmarks on this test because BAR doesn't come on as a default. If it come on the default, and I would, but it doesn't. So and I don't think everybody will be putting a gun in the BIOS and turning it on. And obviously, unless you're obviously a proper gamer, you will be doing so. Okay, we get up to medium settings. Again, the 1650 is doing 90 odds. Then we've got 100, over 100, then 175. So yeah, no problem at all at medium settings. We get up to ultra. and you see that the 6500 XT is still got that blinking massive drop. I still think there's definitely a driver bug or something going on with the 6500 XT with Alder Lake. Okay, let's move on. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Again, this has got presets, so we'll just use the presets. I think it's literally low, medium, high, very high, then ultra, if I remember rightly. Obviously no HDR on and V6 turned off. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Okay, one the RGB 770 at 720p lowest presets. Basically, Valhalla's too powerful for the RGB. Doesn't want to know. We're on the low 20s. I'm going to see the one smooth. If you look at the frame time, it's nice and jaggy. Yeah, you're going to cut your hands on that one. So yeah, it's just too slow, really. We switch over to Nvidia's 1030. Again, 720p, low presets. This position here, going through this gate, is where we take the benchmark stamps from. Okay, we still got a jagged frame time. What we're doing, what, 36 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds. Again, you want it down about 15 if you can, or 18. I think is the norm. It seems to run okay. Ideally, you won't want to go any higher. Switch over to AMD's RX 550. Again, the RX 550 does better than the 1030. We're now banging out over 3 gig. That'll be one of the reasons. Still out 100% GPU. Frame time's a lot smoother. Can't complain too much. I'll do what, 40 frames average. Mum's at low 30s. Yeah, it plays well. Still on the AMD's RX 550, but this time 1080p low presets. We're on like the bare minimum. We're probably better off playing 720p. The RGB and Nvidia 730 was not powerful enough to get this far, so we just try it out with the RX 550. Okay, we're on the Nvidia 1650. This time 1080p. High presets. We're in the 40s, averaging, and one's at low in the mid 30s. Still got a jagged frame time, but it's not bad. Millisecond rates come down. We're using maximum of 4 gig of video memory, and we're still doing like 100% GPU. Basically, just showing get a faster GPU. Yeah, it plays well. At the end of the day, there is still micro freezing in it. It's not perfect on this system, but we just have to put up with it until all the updates come out. We switch over to the AMD RX 6500 XT. Same settings before, 1080p, high presets. We're getting the same sort of FPS as the 1650, still getting the micro freezes. It ain't perfect. I think it's a little bit smoother, mind you, on the frame time, but it's not perfect. It should be a faster card as well, by a good 20%, but it doesn't seem to be showing its power. We're also hitting the 4 gig of memory, so on the video memory, so we're maxing out the video memory, but not the speed. We're now on AMD's RX 6600, 1080p ultra preset, and you can see we're averaging 70 odds, high 70s, 1% low 60s. So yeah, we ain't getting a massive frame drop on the 6600. You can see by the frame time, it's a lot smoother than the others. So yeah, it does still have the spike. And you can see there we're banging out what, over video memory, gain over 6 gig of memory, and as I said earlier, ideally if you want to buy a video card, you want it with 8 gig, at least minimum of 4 these days. and hopefully AMD and Nvidia and Intel will release some new budget cards with a all come with a minimum 4/8 gig as an option, and the GPU is doing around between 90 and 100% still, so we're still going some. This is a new game, so it uses a lot more power than Odyssey. I mean, it's a lovely game, plays nicely at the end of the day. I mean, it's got some nice places you can go, nice scenery, can't complain. Okay, let's move on and get the chart done. Okay, we got the chart up. Don't forget, as I said earlier on the, I think the second benchmark run or the first benchmark run, we take the benchmark stamp as you go through that wooden archway, and that's done for every run we do all the time. Okay, so we look at the RGP 770. It's basically too slow, not playable. You're wasting your time trying. Nvidia 1030, well, you're on the borderline. Again, that'll probably, well, yes and no. It's really up to you how you like to play. I think you'll be okay with the RX 550 at 720p on low settings. We go up to 1080p. Really, none of the cards are, the budget cards are playable. The RX 550 borderline. Again, it depends if you're happy to play like that, because we are a budget channel at the end of the day, and so we look at it and thought, well, if you get away with it, you're happy, you're okay. Okay, we go to 1650. I don't know what's between the 1650 and the RX 550. I don't know if there's any cards out there, not at a proper price anyway. In the middle, it'd be nice if we can get a nice in the middle card. But yeah, 1650 in the 70s, 1% low 60s, 6500 XT 80s, and RX 6600 120s odd. So yeah, no problem, and the 1% lows are pretty good. They're not dropping massively. Go up to high settings. 1650 comes out faster than the 6500 XT. There's definitely obviously a driver going on there somewhere. The RX 6600 has no problem. Again, the 1% low is not really that bad. We get up to ultra settings. And basically you could say, okay, the 1650 is probably not very good for ultra. You're probably better off going down to very high or high settings. RX 6500, now it's got back in front of the 1650. That's playable at ultra, and the RX 6600 has no problem at all at ultra settings. Hello again, we're back. Hope you like the video. Okay, the old benchmarks. Let's start off with the motherboard temperatures. So the VRM on the top left was getting up to 85C. I mean, okay, it's not going to burn out or blow up. The VRMs, depending on what you make, it got up to around, I think, 120, 130. So you'd be okay. And the chipset, the little heatsink, the bottom right hand corner, it's getting up to 44C. Again, I won't worry about it. It's not going to cause any major problems. Okay, wattage wise. Okay, we go by the wall power. Total power is 190 watts. Now that doesn't include a graphic card or the system fans. If you want to put the fans on, so that's 4 fans I've got in here, 120mm fans. It goes up to another 15 watts, so you can say 205 if you want the fans on the system. But we're only including the motherboard, the CPU fan, the system memory, the M2, and the 3TB hard drive from Western Digital. So yeah, gain bare minimum. At idle, the system was doing between 35 and 40 watts, and the CPU package on its own, going by what hardware info, we're doing between 9 and 21 watts. So really low, nothing major. It's staying well in the limits it was designed for. It's not like 11th gen, which is madness really on the temperature and the power being used. So yeah, that's all fine. Wattage power, temperature, fine. The CPU temperature, running Cinebench and Blender, got up to 70, I think 72C. But you got to remember we are using a Fera 5 CPU cooler. 12600K does not come with a cooler. Yeah, just to let you know. And a Fera 5 comes with 120 mil cooler. So take that into consideration. Now obviously you can buy a bigger fan. Depends what CPU you plan to put in there. But yeah, 70C, again, it's not a problem. It's well in the limits to what it's designed for. Okay, score wise, 17,100 in Cinebench, flying. Can't really say no to that. That's fine. Blender, 2 minutes 23 seconds. Game, fantastic score. Okay, let's go back to games. Now, there was other games I benchmarked, or tried to benchmark, and failed. So if you're an Ubisoft fan, I still can't get Division 2 to work, or Watch Dogs. 1 minute they'll work, I'll change the hardware, I'll change the graphic card, and then it won't work. It just refuses to run. So I've got no idea why it's doing that. It's never done it on any other platform but Alder Lake, so there's something going on still with Alder Lake. Freezing wise, okay, we still got micro freezes, but it's not like it was 2 months ago where it weren't really micro freezes, they were freezes. They were freezing for seconds, and games weren't playable. So it's a massive improvement there. I mean, we just have to wait by the end of the year, and hopefully we've got decent BIOSes, graphic card drivers and system drivers, and game updates to fix them all. Problem with old games, now Odyssey run badly, Valhalla run great, so Odyssey. Now Odyssey's what, 6 years old, 7 years old? But it don't look old, and it just played bad. It was awful playing on Alder Lake. But Valhalla was fine, except it had a few micro freezes. So, being an old game, Odyssey, it's hard to say if Ubisoft have fixed it. So, we just have to wait and see. Okay. Just to check these micro freezes and the games what not working, we will test next week my AMD platform. So we do all the benchmarking again, what we just done on the AMD platform, which is a 5600G. So it'll be the same system memory and everything else, to see if the micro freezes goes away and the game problems where they don't run goes away. Because it may be a driver fault which is causing the problem, not Alder Lake. I'll give Intel the benefit of the doubt, but I'm pretty sure it's Alder Lake. And yeah, give it next week or the beginning of the second week, we'll have all that up and running. Okay, so the main thing is, would I buy a platform now? If someone asked me to build one, would I build one for them? Well, I would say the same thing. It's buggy. If I was buying one for myself, well, I wanted one, I wouldn't buy one for myself. Again, you're spending £1,000 on a system upwards, and it's not working 100%. To me, it's not worth the money. You could be waiting ages before everything's fixed. And not being horrible, some things may not get fixed. You might have to wait for Raptor later for that to happen. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, it all worked fine, except the micro freezes and a buggy don't want to work. So yeah, it's a fast platform which has got problems. Okay, that's me done. I hope this video has helped you out, and if it has, as always, please subscribe. Laters all, have fun.